There we go. How are you?
Hi, Terry. So it worked again. Well, I got to tell you, you did it much faster than I did, because the first time Tammy and I did this like 20 years ago, it was a long time ago, because yeah, I was going to say my son Nicholas was probably around, I think he was like 11 or 12. And I was just sick and tired of rescheduling all these baseball games at the end of the year, like I told you before. And so the first time we did it, it literally took us like 20 minutes to actually part the clouds. And then eventually it got less and less time till it got to the point where we didn't even have to like sit and meditate. We were so practiced at it and knew the feeling, because really the feeling is the secret. Cliche, but it's true, that all we do is like, we would just intend it and boom, it was done. I mean, it could be like a storm, pouring rain. I'm like, oh gosh, I got to go pick up, Christelle and Nicholas. And I'm like, okay, this has got to be clear, because I don't want to get wet and slosh and get my, nice business clothes all messed up. So I would just intend it. And then sure enough, like 5 minutes before I was getting ready to leave, I kid you not, bright blue skies just in my neighborhood, just enough to come back. I'm like, this is so fun. So, okay, we got 4 people. I'm going to show you the gallery view as I let you in, and we'll start here in 2 minutes. But I did set it to start with on gallery view so that you can see everybody. Right now we have.
And then will you switch it to speaker, or do I need to later?
I'll switch it to speaker.
Okay, so I don't have to do anything. Okay.
You don't have
and
to.
Then any questions come in?
No, I checked on YouTube and on Facebook. I'll check again to see if anything has come up in the last 15 minutes, because I checked it about 45 minutes ago. But I don't see anything right now, but there's like multiple places. So right now with a minute left, I don't have time to check all the places. So
is that lighting okay?
Yeah, it is okay. You have a little hair on your left side that you might want to just a little bit farther forward, a little forward. Okay, yeah, there. Now,
I get it?
Smooth. Yeah, now it's smoothed down. Yeah, if you
and I got a new. What's that?
I was gonna say, if you could put a little bit of lighting on your right side towards the flowers.
Let me see if this. I'm gonna move this thing.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's a difference. Yeah.
There's a lot of overcast and one direct. It's not as bright outside, and I have. Oh yeah, that makes a big difference. There's a lot of light coming in from outside generally. Today there's not.
Yeah, so that's good. That's good. Okay.
What was I going to say? Oh, we might have to improvise a little bit, stretch it. I don't think I have as much material today.
It's okay. I've got plenty of questions. And where do I? Let me see.
We can always talk about the clouds.
Well, we could talk about, because part of this is manifesting self-love and all that. So I think that that's an important thing to talk about, because really at the center of all of this is love. And so, yeah, we're focusing on self-love and love with another, but to do everything else, like your intention was you didn't want this interruption tonight. And so lo and behold, you expressed it. You followed the steps, which you know very well what they are, and the rest is history. So I'm just writing down.
If we get to the end and we need more filling, we can go back to self-love.
Yeah, because I think that's at the cornerstone of everything. So
well, it is. It absolutely is. You can't love another unless you love yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let the people in. Okay.
And I got a second screen behind me, so I can fit better.
I love that. Okay. Where's my little doodad here? Participants. Okay. Mute all. I'm going to mute all and then mute yourself. Okay.
Unmute myself. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to mute everybody right now. So as soon as everybody comes on live, then unmute yourself once you see everyone.
Okay.
Recording.
Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV, and I'm your host, Dame Lillian Walker, and today we are in our 4th session of Sacred Sexuality and Tantra. And there has been wonderful myths and misconceptions and highlights that have been revealed to us. And with us again is our expert from Hawaii, TERRI Huber, from the beautiful island of Maui. And we've learned so many really exciting, cool and neat things. Last week, I was just so enthralled with the whole idea of the buddy tap, which I alluded to a little earlier today on the Facebook Live, because I think that's a real valuable piece of information for us to have in the back of our minds, whether we are the giver or the receiver of a buddy tap. That's something to be aware of. So TERRI, thank you, my friend and Jem, for being here with us for this 4th class.
It's my pleasure, Lillian. Thank you for making this all possible. You are a mover and a shaker, and I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I want to acknowledge everyone who's on the call today. Because this is our 4th class, at the end of this broadcast, I'd like to just let you guys unmute yourselves all, and you could say either hooray or hi. Let us know where you are watching this from. We would love to hear what your thoughts are. And I think it would just be fun. I think it was in our 2nd broadcast, we had a group where the Zoom was an entire group from Vegas. And that was, I don't know about you guys, but it brought me a great deal of joy to see them going, yay! And they were all doing heart hugs after TERRI had talked about the heart hugs and the heart circle situation. So without further ado, TERRI, let's dive in deep with today's broadcast and just a little recap about the buddy tap, because we did use that as a little bit of a carrot, because a lot of people still don't know what the buddy tap is. So do tell.
Well, the buddy tap is when you're hugging someone that one of you might have an interest in the other, or one of you may not be comfortable with hugging. And so as you're hugging, all of a sudden you feel this tapping on the back. And that means that that person has reached the energetic set point. They don't want it to be hugged anymore. It's basically saying, we're done. Could you please let go now?
Mm-hmm. So it's really telling us 2 things. It's telling us, I'm either done. This is my energetic set point. This is the threshold where no more than this is not, I don't want to say allowed, but I'm like done. And then the other thing is that, instead of a more romantic feeling, you're feeling more of a buddy type feeling, as opposed to a romantic feeling where you don't want to let go of your beloved or the other. So yeah, I think those are really 2 key points that are, if you walk away with nothing else from this 4-part series and you're just aware of that, that is an amazing amount of biofeedback that you are going to use with your body as you interact with other bodies. So
absolutely,
really, really fantastic. So I also wanted to address the issue of, again, because this show is talking about myths and misconceptions and then facts. A lot of people, we've discovered in this 4-week series that Tantra is not sex. Tantra and sacred sexuality is not necessarily purely sex. It has an aspect of it, of course, that involves sex, but that's just one aspect of it. So really, you have said, TERRI, that really Tantra is about self-love. So can you elaborate a little bit more on the self-love piece as we catapult into this other body of information that you're going to share with us today?
Absolutely. It's just vital that we express self-love. When one does not do that, then they're disconnected from their self and disconnected from the divine and disconnected from other. So using these practices, it helps ground you in your own body, in your own essence. And so we've learned that I can love another to the same degree that I love myself. So that's why it's so important for us to be so in love with ourselves that we have a lot of nurturing, yummy, delicious, wonderful love to share with a partner, a husband or a wife, the world. Like, it's just so expansive once we've grounded that love in our own bodies.
So let's talk about, how does how does and how important is the resonance energy when practicing the sacred sexuality and the Tantra, when you're coming together with another person, whether you're involved in the act or not, you're just coming together with them. So what's the...
And even as you're coming together with yourself, it could be a self practice too. The resonance is to get in resonance with the divine within you and also the divine within each other. And so it's like we're tapping into the worldwide web of resonance energy. Each of us are part of that field. We really are all connected. We're all one. And vibrational frequencies can be raised by being in the presence of someone who runs a higher consciousness frequency. So it's really a good idea to take a few breaths with that person that you're going to be practicing with, or with yourself, whatever the setting is, and just drop in and relax into the energy and tune in with each other, even with a few minutes of silence and closed eye. I like to close my eyes and just be in the silence, feel the energy of the divine, feel the energy in my own heart, and feel the energy of the other person. And that helps to tune in so that we're all on the same page, or within myself, I'm on the same page, however you happen to be practicing it.
Wow. So there is, when you're talking about the resonance energy, and I want to make sure that those of you who are just coming into the broadcast, make sure you mute yourselves. Anyhow, as we're talking about this resonance energy, does that have something to do with your autonomic nervous system in training with the other persons?
That's a really good question. I've never heard it worded like that. But our nervous system is energy. So
yeah.
This is a hunch, an intuitive hunch, but yeah, I would say that probably is true.
Yeah, my languaging oftentimes, I try to make it more simplified, but, from a neurosomatic point of view, which is where I come as a clinician, that is something that I look at in terms of, because it has to do with how we heal others and, the amount of real estate that you use in your brain as you're guiding people and so forth. So yeah, so the resonant energy is paying attention and, becoming aware, because most of us, myself included, we're not paying too much attention of what it is that we're actually feeling in our bodies. A lot of us are not grounded and we're kind of flighty, more, even it's amazing to me, because even people who are very focused in business, who are very much, like laser-like focus, and they're busy all day long with whatever it is that they're doing in their work, and 10, 12, 14 hours a day. It's like all of that stuff that has to do with being highly productive and being very successful in your line of work doesn't leave you for any time to be aware of what you're feeling inside your body. So you could still be ungrounded. Some people think it's like, well, I can't, what do you mean I'm not grounded? I'm very grounded. I'm like in the trenches every day, from sun up to sundown, and sometimes 24-hour shifts and so forth. You still can be out of your body and not be grounded. You're so tunnel. Yep. And I'm saying because that was me. And so you can be completely unaware of the cues that your body's trying to tell you, and things go unnoticed because your focus and your attention is so much in this that you're unaware of this, which is probably the greatest radar that we could have.
Yes. And that busyness you're talking about, usually that means that the person is bringing energy up into their head. And we want to bring the energy back down into the body, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, but particularly the heart. It's the heart that connects the body, the lower chakras, with the upper chakras. So the heart is the gateway. It's the middle way.
Yeah. And research scientists have now proven that we actually have brain cells in our heart, which the mystics, all these ancient religions and the mystics, it doesn't matter whether it's Hindu, Taoism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism, it really doesn't matter. Even religions that we're not aware of in the Western world, they've all acknowledged this. They, whenever you ask somebody who they are, they don't go, I'm this person. They go, I'm me, It's like, well, where are you? They don't go, I'm right here. No, they go, I'm right here. It's like their brain heart knows that they're right here. and not
Mhm.
here or anywhere else. And so to acknowledge that that is, it's important to be grounded in your heart, where your energy is in your heart rather than just in your head, I think is very, very,
Absolutely.
very profound. So speaking of head, with the use of the tongue and the mouth, would this be part of the experience when you're doing Tantra? It's like I have a question about not just the sacred sexuality and Tantra, but I've heard of something called like the Bhagda, and I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right, because one of my mentors, Bert Goldman, who he did a lot of hypnosis and alpha meditation
Mhm.
practices, but he was also very aware, even though I didn't learn from him yogic practices and things like that. But he always talked about in meditation about the Bhagda. And so, and I remember when he first talked about that, and this was years ago, I remember going on Google and trying to look it up. I couldn't find any information on it. And I thought, well, I'm probably not spelling it right. And it really didn't matter how I spelled it. I could not find any information on it. So it really was this obscure thing. So I'd like to find out in Tantra, is there something, involving the tongue and the mouth when it comes to Tantra and the sacred sexuality?
Yes, we can use all of our senses to both give and receive pleasure. And of course, we do that with consent, consent, consent. I can't say that enough. Ask permission, and the receiver, if at any time it doesn't feel good, tell them to stop. In fact, during the course I'm going to be teaching, I have one of the modules practicing the word no, because some people don't want to offend other, even if it doesn't feel good in their body, they'll still say yes. And that's not honoring to yourself. So we practice saying no.
Wow.
Because it's always a good, well, you know this more than anyone, neurosomatically, when you practice something, then when it comes to the real event, it's a little bit easier to follow through with it. Then if you want to give the receiver a sensual experience with permission, you can, lick their fingers, and this is getting quite sensual, but that's where we're going. You can lick their fingers, their toes. You can put whipped cream on them or chocolate syrup and lick it off. Again, this is all with permission. So use your tongue as though you were savoring a lollipop, as just as sensually, make it sensual for the giver as well as the receiver. Now, it's always vital to create a safe environment for that receiver, because the objective, whatever we're doing, is to put love into the body and create pleasure and security. We're not there to trigger the nervous system so that someone goes into fight or flight. That's not our objective. So recipient, be sure to speak up. Even if what you're saying is, please slow down, or please stop, or please pause for a minute while I can track it in my body. Because sometimes the receiver, I know for me, I couldn't even identify what I was feeling, but I knew something was going on. So I would pause, and take a minute to be able to identify what I was feeling in my body. So feeling is the path to healing. So receiver, don't be bashful about saying, no, or whatever it takes, so that you don't put yourself in a trauma situation inadvertently, because that can happen like lightning. All of a sudden you're in a trauma and the giver is like going, what? Because I've been asking. So it's so important that the receiver is really clear, because you never know what the receiver has had happen in the past. Maybe they were abused, and whatever touch you gave, remind them of that abuse. Of course, you didn't mean to, but that's why you keep checking in. And as a giver, also pay attention if the receiver is starting to tense up. You can kind of tell when people are kind of squirmy, or, squeezing their eyes shut, kind of read their body language too, and step it up with asking the questions, or even if they're withholding information, the receiver is withholding information, a giver can always stop too, so that they both feel equally confident in moving forward in a nurturing, loving, cherishing, respectful way.
So it sounds to me, I'm really loving the fact that in Tantra, and I had no idea that this was one aspect of it, but two things that really are like blaring out at me are, one, it's an acknowledgement and an engagement of all the senses, which when you do that, then you're getting the maximum amount of communication because you're involving and integrating all of them and not just relying just on one. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is the actual spoken communication, where a lot of communication and not just consent, but being mindful of what you're doing and how it's being received and vice versa. So there's a lot of mindfulness and conscientiousness in this, which now I'm starting to understand. I'm getting the feeling how cared for both parties feel in an exchange like this. If you are, engaged in this union with another, human being, with your mate, then I can imagine how nurtured, how cared for, how safe, how treasured both would feel, because you're both mindful about preserving the sacred space between the two of you. And if you're practicing this first by yourself, then you're going to be more apt and more relaxed to do that once you are engaged in that union with another.
Yes.
Before this started, I would have never thought that any of this had to do with communication or all of your senses, things like the buddy tap and stuff. And I mean, so to me, this is just really remarkable, because I think so many of us have had some, myself primarily, misconceptions that are so way off base, and it could be further, nothing further from the truth. And now that I, had the courage to say, okay, let's go ahead and explore this. Let's find out what's the truth, what's, from someone who actually is an expert and not just from, whoever. I think this makes a world of difference. And for me, I kind of feel like it opens a whole other world of possibilities, because I think at the heart of most people, you really want to not just be able to give love, but you also want to have that love received, and to be really just all-encompassing and loving, and have that in a reciprocal type of environment. So this looks like the perfect, I don't know if I want to call it system, method. I mean, is Tantra called a system or method, or is it just a practice or philosophy, or what is it?
I've generally heard it called a practice, but
Practice, okay. That makes sense.
And you picked some great words when you said you want to show a lot of care between each other, that you treasure each other. And as a single person practices this with his or herself, when they get into a relationship with other, not only will they know how they want to be touched, but they'll also possibly be more conscientious of how they touch others, and respond in all the senses. I'm just talking about touch right now because that's what we're talking about. But across the board, you have more awareness. Now, in my case, when I was receiving sessions, I did not receive loving, nurturing touch through childhood or in the marriage I was in. So when I felt the bliss in my body as an adult through these sacred practices, I actually started crying. Because what's that?
Were they tears of joy?
Yes, because I had never embodied that experience. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what it's supposed to feel like when you're really cherished and treasured and respected. It was phenomenal. And then really, actually, the tears started because I realized what I'd been missing out on all my life.
Wow. Wow.
So they were both tears of joy and tears of grieving. So that was a really interesting paradox to hold in my body. I was feeling both ends of the spectrum. So my energetic set point was being tested at both ranges of the spectrum at the same time.
Wow. So, okay, so I'm sorry, but I cannot divorce myself from my clinical neurosomatic knowledge, and then from my persona as just, a regular, normal human being. So my question to you would be then, number one, I could see how this, I'm understanding now, I can wrap my brain around and understand how this was so healing for you, how it healed your nervous system, because you are integrating all the different senses in terms of, my gosh, if we were to put an encephalogram on you while this activity is taking place on him and on both parties, your brains would be lit up like a Christmas tree, because, you're using your eyes, you're using your listening, you're creating sounds with your mouth, you're smelling things, you're feeling things, not just with your hands. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but your eyes and your hands take up the majority of the real estate in your brain, which is why modalities that incorporate the eyes and the hands are so powerful to resolve and dissolve any kind of emotional things that you're having. So that being said, now you're integrating and using your entire body in this experience in such a loving, heart-centered manner. I'm curious, what you probably digested a lot of emotions in the 25 hours after that was done. And then each time you came together, it again was I can see how that would be, again, just from a neuroscience perspective, holy cow, that is extraordinary.
And it was a challenge even getting in the car and driving home afterwards, because so much was shifting. But I forget the traditional name of it. It's called fool's gold. It's a grounding stone. And I put one in each. I carried them in the car on purpose for just such occasions when I had to drive. And I held one in each hand as I was driving to help balance and center myself enough so that I could actually drive home afterwards.
So yeah, I think you bring a very valid point, which some people are aware of this, but there are certain stones that you can hold in your hand that are very grounding. You're lucky you're in Hawaii, because you guys have a lot of volcanic rock, which is really grounding. And I know that there's also shungite and obsidian. Native American Indians have been known to make arrows from obsidian, but they also use it as a grounding mineral, rock, crystal, whatever term you want to use for that. So that's good. That's a good piece of information to keep in mind for those of you who want something tangible to ground yourself. Just holding it in your hand. You just held it in your left or your right hand once you...
Both hands, I had a piece of it. And I'm just looking online trying to find the common name for it. I mean, the more technical name, I mean.
Isn't it mica?
Somebody does it. What's that?
Isn't it mica?
I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe look it up.
Oh, pyrite. It's pyrite. That's what it is.
Wow.
That worked well for me. I mean, everybody has to connect with whatever stone works for them, but that's what worked for me.
Yeah. Now, did you try, I know you said you're using stones. Did you try just putting your feet on the earth, like grass or dirt or sand?
I did, but usually it was kind of just a situation where I had to get in the car and go home because of other things going on. So that's why I use the stones. But yes, grounding barefoot on the earth would also work.
So any normal grounding practices. I like having the stone, the pyrite in your hand, because it's something tangible and it kind of signals your brain where it becomes so obvious, because your intention is to ground and then you grab it. And so,
so I had it in my palm, in between my palm and the steering wheel. I was holding the wheel, but the stone was right in my palm next to the steering wheel.
Oh, I love that you said that. I thought you just held it in your hand before you started driving. So
no, I actually drove with it in my hand.
Wow,
Both hands.
wow. So did you find yourself, as you continued the practice and engaging in this way, did you notice that over time then, was it just a one-time? I know everyone's going to be different. Some people may or may not cry, as a result of this or not. But did you find that for your own personal experience, was it like several times before you felt that there was really no need to cry, and now you were just in this, not that it's a bad thing, crying is a cleansing, of oneself. And again, whether the tears are of joy or the tears are of sadness, of, whatever that might be, or grief, as you mentioned, it's all a good thing because it's, resolving and dissolving things inside your body so that you can be digested.
Yeah, so there was no particular pattern on when I would happen to cry or not, because it was just as things released within my energy field. I'm very passionate about healing. So if I'm feeling something, I let it move through. I don't hold it back. In fact, I'm probably just the opposite, meaning I really let it out. And if I needed to scream, I would. Like, I wouldn't hold back. Like voicing fear, anger, whatever it is you're holding, voicing helps also as you're releasing it. So I made use of every modality that was available because I wanted to move through this energy. I wanted to create a new life of joy and happiness and pleasure.
Wow. So this seems to me that it has a lot of, there's a lot of similarities and a lot of things that it shares in common with meditation. I dare say that it almost sounds like a form of meditation because some of the results are similar to that of meditation.
They can have similarities, yes.
So how does taste play a part for the receiver in this type of interaction?
So I generally save the taste for the receiver at the end of the session and offer them something as a way of service as we end our time together. So you could, there's a lot of sensory taste buds on the tongue. So you could choose something in all 5 categories if you want. And those are sweet, sour, bitter, salty, or savory. Or you could just pick one, whatever energy you feel. And then I also like to actually feed the receiver myself as a symbol of honor and respect.
Oh. So you're saying you as the receiver, you like to feed the giver.
Oh no, the giver feeds the receiver.
The giver feeds the receiver. Oh, okay, giver.
Maybe I said that backwards, sorry.
No, I probably heard it backwards. So giver feeds receiver. And so that's as a thank you, as a not so you said as a symbol of respect.
And honor, yes. Because the whole session you're giving to the receiver, because the giver, sets the tone, like I said last week. The giver makes the room beautiful, puts out flowers, puts out candles, puts out maybe water, puts out maybe essential oils, whatever it is that you feel could beautify the environment for the receiver. And as far as music goes, I really like Spotify. You might have some other app, but Spotify, you can use keywords like Tantra or Shakti or Kundalini or Hindu, and playlists will come up that are already created. And I prefer playlists that have no words. It's just, background music that sounds like sacred.
Okay, so you said the word Shakti. What does Shakti mean?
Shakti is the female feminine energy that's related to Kundalini that comes up the spine, that goes from the root chakra through the crown. I don't know if you've noticed snakes it's even in our medical symbol. Would you call that the medical symbol? Yeah, snakes are intertwining on the pole. That's actually a symbol of the Kundalini and Shakti energy. That's where those snakes originated. They say that it's coiled at our base in our root until it's activated, and then it moves up the spine.
Wow. And so is that something that oftentimes is activated during, like?
Yes.
So it's activated either during the act or during the learning of the Tantra practices?
Yes, it can be. Now, again, there's no hard and set fast rule. Everybody has their own experience and everybody's is different. But yes, mine became awakened during my sessions when I was when I was being healed from all the trauma I had had in the past.
Okay. So Shakti is a feminine or a masculine energy, or is it like neutral?
It's feminine.
It's feminine. It's a feminine energy, but men and women have the Shakti energy.
They can, yes. And Kundalini is a general term.
Oh, okay. So they're not exactly the same thing, but they're related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And how about like we hear in Dr. Joe's teachings, of course, you know, we talk about the energy centers, and we primarily focus on the 8 energy centers of the body. I know that or I think in Tantra, they use the word chakras. So we've heard about chakras. What is a tantric chakra healing? You know, is there such a thing?
Yeah, there's what we refer to it as a chakra blessing. And in doing so, we're putting a love and blessing into the body, and it helps balance each of the 7 energy centers. So anytime you're approaching somebody's body with your hands, or even your body, always come into their energy field slowly and with reverence. If you just move in fast, that's a shock to their system, and you want them to always feel safe and open-hearted. So most of you probably know, but I'll go through them. The root chakra is the base chakra. It's, you know, the red color of red. The sacral is the second, and the color for that is orange. The solar plexus is the third one, and the color for that is yellow. The heart is the 4th, and the color for that is green. The throat is the 5th, and the color for that is blue. The third eye is the 6th, and the color for that is indigo. And the crown chakra is the 7th, and the color for that is purple. So the only agenda, again, that you're having when you're giving these chakra blessings is to put a loving presence from your own pure heart into the recipient. And you can do that either by hovering your hand over the body or actually touching the body. And again, it is with permission and consent. It is up to the receiver to decide and tell you which they feel comfortable with. So I had a very interesting experience with a friend. I'll just call him Victor to keep him anonymous. He was having a really tough time after a breakup with a longtime girlfriend. And it was so interesting. I carry this energy that, well, I am a safe person, and people feel that energetically, and they always reveal such intimate details to me. And so he revealed that he had not had an erection in several years. And he had tried dating and no response from his lingam. It was just like offline. And he was feeling great shame around it. So I offered to give him a chakra blessing, which you'll learn how to do that in the course I'm going to be offering. And I only hovered my hand over his body. I did not touch him. And I blessed each of the 7 chakras. And at the end of the blessing, he had an erection and excitedly exclaimed, "What did you do?" And so really, it's set and setting. The fact was, he felt very relaxed with me because I was a friend. There was no specific outcome. There was no expectation, either on his part or my part. And I was just moving the energy through the chakras, unblocking them, and then nature took its natural course.
Wow. So just by you doing a blessing of his 7 energy centers, it unlocked the energy so that everything could flow and be in balance.
Yes.
So that you had that result. That's incredible. Yes. And
yeah,
how go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you said go ahead.
I was really new to the practice. I was probably only 1 year into this. So I was just as surprised as he was.
That is really wonderful. Oh my gosh. That is really, really amazing. So what are some of the other uses? I'm excited you're going to be teaching the chakra blessing. So that's going to be in the course, how to actually do a chakra blessing. So what are some of the other uses, or maybe you can share with us some other benefits that people have experienced from the chakra blessing? Because I would imagine that people, depending on who they are, maybe they have the 5th energy center that's blocked, or someone who's had, a lot of bad relationships, maybe, or maybe just one traumatic relationship, and maybe you have your heart centered energy center is blocked, or it could be any one of them. So can you share with us maybe some of the results that people have gotten, or benefits that people have gotten from the blessing of these energy centers?
Sure. The root chakra is one that's usually unstable with a lot of people because whatever kind of trauma you have in your life, you generally don't feel safe. And safety is the home base for the root chakra. So that is vital to get that one back online. And like you said, the heart, if somebody's just been brokenhearted, just to put a lot of love in there so they can feel open-hearted again. And this may not happen overnight. You know, everybody moves at their own pace. There's no, like I said, there's no agenda. It's not like I want you to act or respond a certain way. It's everybody in their own timing. It's their own journey. And let's go back to the sacral chakra too, which in this system runs the sexual organs. In working with other gentlemen other than Victor, I've noticed that there is a lot of pressure that men put on themselves with how they perform with women. And in putting that pressure on themselves, they actually get the opposite effect of what they want. They're putting so much shame and guilt on themselves that it shuts themselves down. So anybody, really, it could be man or woman. It doesn't necessarily have to be the man that's carrying the shame or guilt. It could be the woman too. But my point is, whoever you're interacting with, how important it is to make them feel treasured and loved and cherished, just exactly like they are, just where they're at. And you would be surprised when you give someone that safety and security, they generally really open up and things expand in ways you are surprisingly delighted with.
So I find this fascinating. So you're saying that, is it most men or a lot of men? Or, I mean, I don't know if you know the statistics, or maybe is it half of them? I'm kind of surprised that you're saying that a lot of men have this, I don't know if you want to call it performance anxiety, but they put a lot of pressure on themselves when it comes to coming together. They're obviously very much in their head then, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because men are performers. And I don't mean just in the sexual arena. They go out, they're the guy, they hunt the deer, they, launch the boat, they go to space, they win the bread and bring home the gold and yada, yada. So they're used to always being or striving for success, So I think they put that same pressure on themselves when it comes to being in the bedroom with the feminine or with another guy, if they happen to be of that persuasion. Either way, they put pressure on themselves. They tend to.
Wow. So then that's probably where, as women, we can, because I think most of the people on this call this time were all female, but I think that it falls again, it's that reciprocity where just as we want them to make us feel safe, I think it's also important for us to make it a safe place, because you're co-creating this sacred union between the two of you. So if you can also make it safe for them, where you're not putting them or demanding or requiring, just come in for the pure enjoyment. And it's like, what? It's like nothing even really needs to happen. Sometimes just the tenderness of, cuddling with each other, caressing each other, just being in, those little sweet nothings that you say or do for each other. Those are beautiful moments of intimacy that could lead to something, but don't have to. And I think by taking the have to part out and let's just see what happens. I think that's it's also more playful, because you don't know, you're kind of like, well, there might be hopeful anticipation that, but I think kind of having a little bit more of a question mark where you kind of leave it a little more open probably has both of you maybe in a more relaxed state, because you're just kind of literally feeling each other out.
Yes. And taking that time to get to know each other sensually in the body without intercourse is really like a bridge. You're building trust with the person. You're building a sense of safety and security, and the other person will be able to feel your sincerity. And that in itself, building that foundation first, I believe, will lead to a better sexual experience if you take it that, if you keep building and that's where you want to go. I believe you will have a better outcome because you set a foundation of trust.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah. So I can see how, again, it really just creates this environment of both for both parties. It's not just one more than the other. It's a reciprocal, it's kind of like symbiosis, where you have,
Mhm.
the mother and the child in the womb, where it's like a symbiotic relationship. I think that that's probably very conducive to this. And I'm kind of actually surprised the more I learned. I mean, we're now 3.5, almost 4 hours into this. And I'm like, it seems like this is something that we should have been taught, quite honestly, in
Yes.
high school. We should have been taught this in preparation for when, that day comes that you engage in this, because I think it would really heal. It would set the right foundation between two
Yes.
individuals from the get-go, and not these distortions that we have, that we see on TV or we see in the movies or Hallmark cards or whatever, whatever social media that's out there. And it's also very obvious to me that in this practice, that mutual love and respect is, again, it's something that it's flowing in both directions, where you have love and respect for the other individual, and that it's going to be, the door swings both ways.
Mhm.
So when you have that type of a foundation, even if the relationship for whatever reason doesn't work out, then the two parties can walk away with mutual respect, because there's still a certain amount of love and appreciation that's there, even though maybe those two lives can't move on together for whatever reason. Maybe they were just supposed to come to have this particular interaction. Whatever the
Mhm.
case may be, everybody has a different, path and whatnot. But I think this sets a really healthy foundation of open, honest communication, and really reciprocity, and that, like, truly unconditional love.
Mhm. Yes. And I find it really interesting that you brought up high school sex education, because I think back to when I was in high school, and really all it was teaching me how not to get pregnant and not to get venereal diseases. Like, really, are you kidding me? There's more to it than that. Way more to it than that. Like,
Well,
we were so undereducated in that department. It was ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, I remember being in 5th grade, and of course, they said it's like, oh, it's time for sex ed. So it's like the boys over here, the girls over here. Then I remember them showing us a film, and I'm like, I can't make sense of anything that's on that screen, because I've never seen anything on my body that looks anything like that. And it's like, I didn't really understand what I was seeing there, because they really didn't, they thought they were explaining it, but they really weren't explaining it.
Mhm.
And so I remember going to my 15-year-old cousin, because I was 11, and my older cousin Sally. I'm like, okay, Sally, I'm like, they talked about the birds and the bees, and this is what they told me in class. And then I really didn't understand any of the stuff that they were showing up on there. Apparently there were kids in my class that were way more sophisticated than I was, more learned than I was, or maybe they had older siblings that, talked to them at greater detail. Because then there were some girls that told me some things that I said, you guys are like, they told me actually, where the parts went and stuff. And I said, it's like, who would ever think of such a thing? I'm like, you guys are whacked. So then I told my cousin Sally, and she's like, well, actually, she goes, they're not whacked. That's actually kind of how it works. And my little brain was going, the pieces of the puzzle don't fit in my mind. I
Mhm.
don't understand this, right? And so there was a lot of confusion, if anything. It didn't add clarity, it made it more confusing. And so I think if they had done a better job, I have no idea what it's like nowadays. I remember having that talk with my kids when, once they turned 10 years old, I remember talking to my husband, telling him, it's like, okay, I'm going to have the talk, and I'm going to have it from my perspective as a mother. So I'm going to talk to him. And then when I'm done, then at some point you need to have a talk from a father perspective. And the same thing with my daughter, because I thought it was important for each child to have mom's perspective and dad's
Mhm.
perspective, not just one perspective, because they're two very different perspectives, right? And
Right.
both are important. It's important for my sons to hear my perspective and to hear their dad's perspective, as well as my daughter to hear, again, both perspectives. And I just remember also one of the things that I did, because one of the things when I was that age, every time I would ask my mom, she's like, oh, you're too young to know that. When you're old enough, when you're old enough, the school will teach you. Mind you, she's a teacher. But she obviously didn't want to bridge that subject kind of for a long time. And so I was kind of going, and then as you get older, they've got, some more sex ed classes. But like you said, it's all, trying to keep you from having, sexual interaction, and to keep, they want to scare you to death with all the venereal diseases, which are a very real possibility. There's no question about it. But it's more about that, and then keeping you from doing it, as opposed to really educating you kind of more comprehensively. I think this would be there's the piece of the pie that does involve abstinence, a piece of the pie that does involve safe sexuality. There's an aspect of it, it's like you have to be aware of the venereal, not just venereal diseases. There's all sorts of diseases, not just venereal, that are inherent when you engage in that type of activity, and how to move forward safely and so forth, and birth control and everything else that comes along with that. But I think it should be it's like, if you were to look at it as a pizza pie, don't just give us one slice of pizza, give us the whole pie. Don't give us just a fragment and leave like 80% of it out, because that's not doing it justice. And so, if anything, it handicaps us, really, because it keeps us from having a more complete experience.
Exactly. And I didn't really see cherishing each other in my parents. And I certainly didn't see cherishing each other in the high school and junior high sex ed program. So I just went out into the world naive and just accepted whatever I got, because I didn't know any better.
Well, yeah, again, you don't know. One of my favorite sayings the last 20 years is, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then once you know it, you can't unring that bell. Now you become aware, your consciousness expands, you kind of move forward from that. Wow. So let's talk about, I know that we've got about 10 minutes left. And I know that your class is going to start here. I'm going to hold up to the camera. Is it showing backwards or right side?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So October 26th at 4 p.m. Hawaii time, which is 7 p.m. California time. It's a Tuesday, is the beginning of your class. And your class is going to be 8 weeks?
Yes. This course will be an 8-week course starting on the 26th, a Tuesday night. And we will have a time change 2 weeks into it. So initially Pacific time will be 7, Eastern time will be 10 p.m. But when that time change happens, then Pacific will be 6 and Eastern will be 9. So that'll make it a little bit easier for those of you on the East Coast. And in Hawaii, it'll stay 4 o'clock. So I just encourage you to give this gift to yourself and learn the embodied practices that I will be showing you during the course. We'll be using Zoom. And also, if any of you are planning on visiting Maui or know anybody vacationing here, or friends or honeymooners or relatives, I also offer live in-person sessions. And I really enjoy being with the person face to face. Thank God for Zoom because of COVID, but really, it's my soul's mission to just be with people.
Oh, it looks like we may have lost connection with Terry. Let's give her a second here because the screen just froze. We'll give her a second to come back on live because I think her screen might be buffering. So basically the class is October 26th.